Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Dr. Bradley Nelson, Doctorate of Chiropractic, retired, is a veteran holistic physician. He is one of the world's foremost experts on natural methods of achieving wellness. He has trained thousands of certified practitioners worldwide to help people overcome physical and emotional discomfort by releasing their emotional baggage. His best-selling book, The Emotion Code, provides step-by-step instructions for working with the body's energy healing power. Well, Dr. Nelson, thank you for joining us here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's really great to be here, Tim.
I was hoping you could start us off by letting us know how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Well, absolutely. I had a couple of really powerful experiences with healing. I was very sick with the measles when I was 7 years old. And my mother asked my father to pray for me. And believe it or not, as he was praying for me, I was instantaneously healed. It's the most unforgettable experience, I think, of my life. And it was many years ago. We won't say how long ago, but that left an indelible impression. I realized at a very early age that, if you're really sick, it's possible to be instantaneously well the next moment. That happened to me. And then about 7 years later, I developed kidney disease. And I was healed from that by some holistic doctors. And so that helped me to realize another layer that the Western medicine community had nothing to offer me, Western medicine, nothing to offer me at all. But these holistic doctors were the ones that I needed. They worked on me and I could feel my body responding immediately. And they healed me. And I'm still alive, I think, because of them. So that taught me that healing can be had in places that sometimes you might not suspect. And so then eventually I went into chiropractic, became a doctor of chiropractic, opened my own practice. And as I started working with people, I found great success just by realigning people's bones and spines especially. But sometimes I had people that would come in to see me that I couldn't seem to help. And so that led me to want to dig deeper. And so I became eventually more of a holistic chiropractor, which means that I wasn't just looking at the bones of the spine and how things were aligning physically. I was also looking at every other possible thing that I could. And so after studying ancient forms of healing and more modern forms that were different, I was able to eventually put together my own system of working with people and helping people to get well. It worked so well that during the last 10 years that I was in practice, most of the people that I saw, the vast majority of the people that I saw were people that had been told that there was really no hope for them, nothing that Western medicine had to offer them at all. And so they were told that all they could do was just live with their problem and they'd never get over it. And so these were the kind of people coming to see me during those years. And the vast majority of them were able to get well with just a couple of exceptions. And the key to that was that, and the key to all of the work that we do with the emotion code and the body code is this idea, this understanding, this new paradigm. And that is that within each one of us, there is a what you might call the subconscious mind, or the internal computer within each one of us that knows exactly why we're sick or why we're having symptoms of whatever kind, whether they're mental or emotional or physical. The subconscious mind within each one of us knows with a perfect understanding what it is we really need and what needs to either be released from us or what things we might need to take that we don't have enough of to help us to get well. And so that was how I was working with patients. And so it was really an interesting thing because people would come in to see me. They'd have been diagnosed with various problems and many of them supposedly incurable. And I got to a point where I really didn't care what they'd been diagnosed with. You see, Western medicine comes up with new diseases every year. And they have to, because that's how they get paid, right? And I got to a point where it didn't really matter very much to me what their diagnosis was, because a lot of those diagnoses carried, just a hopeless sort of prognosis for them. But what I was doing is I was going directly to the subconscious mind and asking what was happening and what people needed. And that made all the difference in the world. And so I wrote this book, The Emotion Code, and it came out originally in 2007. And then this new one came out, I think, in 2019. This is the hardcover version. But this book is now in many languages around the world. And we have thousands, over 10,000 testimonials from people from all over the world. They come in every single day. People who have found that by releasing their emotional baggage, they're able to function better, where their problems seem to improve spontaneously when they start getting rid of their emotional baggage. And I probably should explain a little bit more about emotional baggage, first of all, and how that really works. So
yeah, you call it trapped emotions in the book.
Right, exactly. And the euphemism for it is emotional baggage. We often use that phrase, especially when we're describing other people, right? So-and-so over there has a lot of emotional baggage,
right?
But we all do. And so to understand what emotional baggage is, you have to understand that the body itself is made of energy. Einstein and all the quantum physicists basically have admitted, yes, that there really is no matter as such. When we think of energy, we think of our bodies. Our bodies seem to be made of something really solid. Einstein said that matter, which is what makes up our bodies, is really just energy that has been slowed down in its vibration enough that it becomes visible to our eyes and we can touch it and feel it, and it has a certain amount of mass and so on. So, but if you take a big enough magnifying glass and you start looking at your hand and you keep zooming in, eventually you're looking face to face with a single individual atom. And if you look inside that atom, you see there's really nothing in there. It's just empty space. And there's some little infinitesimally tiny energies that are zipping around at the speed of light. And that's really what we are. So our reality is a little different than what we think it is. And the quantum physicists have been trying to help us to understand this for over 100 years now. But basically, when you're feeling an emotion, you're feeling a certain vibrational frequency on a quantum level, at the lowest level of reality. Every emotion has its own specific vibrational frequency. So anger is a different frequency than sadness, and that's different from grief. And they're all different. But when you're feeling an intense emotion, if that emotion is powerful enough, the energy from that emotion may get trapped in the body. So after that event is over, after the bully moves away, or your divorce is finalized, or you quit that bad job and get a better job, yet there is still some of that emotional energy that is stuck in your body. And we call it a trapped emotion, literally your emotional baggage. A trapped emotion, we believe, is a little ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a cantaloupe. And these will lodge in the body in various different places. They can lodge anywhere in the body. And wherever they lodge, they cause a couple of different kinds of problems. One thing that trapped emotions do is they tend to make it easier for you to feel whatever emotional frequency that is. Another thing that they do is that they tend to distort the normal energy field of the body. And because the body is just an energy field, when you distort some part of the body long term, well, of course, you're interfering with the chemical reactions in that area. You're interfering with the flow of energy, the chi energy, and so on, the blood flow, the lymph flow to some degree. And so one of the most common things that we see with emotional baggage is physical pain. 90% of all the physical pain that we have seen in 33 years now has actually had emotional baggage as the underlying cause. Now think about that. Of all the tens of thousands of people that are watching this right now, what percent of them are in pain? Well, probably a significant percentage. And the very significant percentage of those people actually have physical pain because of some emotional baggage. And it might not be from something recent. It could be from something 10 or 20 years ago or more. And so that's one of the most powerful aspects of this work, and why people are finding such dramatic success just by reading the book and using some of the exercises in the book, they find out that pain is one of these things that oftentimes we don't necessarily need to live with if you can find the baggage at the root of it. It's a fascinating thing. And it's kind of like the analogy that I like to use to help people understand this is if you think about your car and imagine you're driving down the highway and the check engine light comes on. Well, you don't know what's going on. You know that something needs attention, right? You take off at an exit and you find a mechanic and you pull in the mechanic. What if the mechanic looked at your car and came back to you and said, well, we know what's wrong. Your check engine light was on. So we've disconnected it. So you should be good to go. Well, you're not a mechanic, probably. I'm not. But if that happened to me, I'd think, well, wait a minute, that can't be right. That check engine light was on for a reason. Now, these bodies of ours are so complex. There are no engine lights anywhere. But instead, when we have problems going on, the check engine light in your body, one of those is physical pain, you see. Another one is maybe the result that you are not able to really find love in your life. Or another result might be that maybe you can't seem to maintain a balance in your bank account. Money, it's like your bank account has holes in it, like a sieve, and the money just seems to drain away. So these are things that are common symptoms. Now, emotional baggage, because that emotional energy can lodge anywhere in the body, it can actually cause just about anything, or it can be the underlying cause or a contributing factor to just about anything. Every disease process, now think about this, every disease process that we've seen now in 33 years of doing this has had emotional baggage as a component. So imagine, you hear about a friend of yours who's diagnosed with cancer. Is there an emotional component to that? In my experience, 100% of the time, there is an emotional component to cancer. So what if you're doing chemo and radiation and you're eating right and you're doing everything else that you're supposed to do, but what if you're ignoring that emotional component? Well, then you may not get well. It may not be enough, see? And so imagine every disease process now that we've seen in all these years, over 3 decades, has had emotional baggage as an underlying cause. So it's kind of amazing to think about. And it's very far outside the normal Western medicine paradigm. But the new paradigm that is coming is the paradigm that our bodies are actually made of energy, like all these really, really bright people have been telling us for over 100 years. And that the best way to deal with the body is through some form of energy medicine, some form of energy healing that deals with our bodies on that level of energy. And that's what the emotion code actually is. That's why it works. And so when people use it, they find that things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage of all kinds, many, many cases just seems to kind of melt away because the emotional baggage is so often the underlying root of it.
Well, and I'm grateful that you've put this out. I have, as a psychologist with training in energy medicine work, most of the techniques that I was trained in require an outside person to diagnose where the problem is and then do the energy application or figure out which meridians need attention. And the benefit of a book like yours is that anybody can pick it up and read it and start doing the work with themselves, or get a partner to do the work with them if they're not that comfortable doing their own muscle testing. But the levels at which you've worked on this are fascinating to me. And they don't just involve the emotions that I might download if I have a negative interaction with somebody, but you've also gone into the realm of inherited emotions and the heart wall, and gives it such a depth and applicability. I wonder if you could address that for us a little bit, because a lot of people don't even understand that they might have inherited emotional issues from their parents, from their great-grandparents, et cetera.
Yes. Well, this is really one of my favorite topics and one of my favorite parts about the emotion code. What happens to us is that we experience various kinds of trauma during our lives, and we experience these intense emotional events, and sometimes they're more intense than others, and sometimes they're life-altering. And when we have an intense event that is life-altering, or that maybe turns out to be a close call, maybe with death or something like that, or we're terribly humiliated, or we're jilted at the altar, or maybe we end up losing everything financially. The emotional energies from those kinds of experiences will often be passed down. Now, animals do this. Scientists not that long ago started finding this out, that if an animal has some kind of a traumatic experience, somehow it will pass the energy, or it will pass the memory of that down. Right. Famous study that they did with mice, where they introduced some kind of an emotional event. I think they were shocked or something, whenever they would also be smelling this certain aroma, some kind of a blossom. I can't remember what it was.
Peach blossom, I think.
Yeah, I think something like that. And so what happened is the offspring of those mice, when they would smell that smell, even though they hadn't ever been shocked themselves, they would exhibit that kind of freezing behavior, letting the researchers know that, yes, the mouse has inherited some kind of a memory about this. Well, then what they found is they took sperm from male rats or mice, one or the other, and they impregnated female rats that were on the other side of the campus that had never had anything to do with anything like this at all. And their offspring also had inherited that kind of traumatic memory. So scientists are finding that lower animals even will inherit memories like this somehow, and that they inherit them up to 14 generations down the line. Now, if you think about your own ancestry and what your ancestors may have gone through, I have ancestors on my father's side who went through the potato famine and so on in Ireland, but other people, and I've worked on many people whose ancestors were slaves, or who had gone through the pogroms if they were Jewish. And I think if you look back in just about every person's line far enough on earth, you're going to find, some intense things that happened. When you think about all the wars that have been fought and all the bad things that have happened in this world. So it's a fascinating thing. I'll share an experience that I had with you, a personal healing experience about this kind of thing. It was about 2 years after the Emotion Code book first came out. And I thought that I'd been cleared of all my emotional baggage long before, because you can get rid of all of it. And then it's just a matter of checking yourself periodically to see if you picked up anything new. So I called my daughter one day and asked her if she would work on me. Now the Emotion Code and everything else that we teach is all energy medicine, energy healing. And because it's energy healing, it works on the quantum level. And because of that, there is no barrier of distance whatsoever. We have people all over the world. We've got over 8,000 people now, practitioners that we've trained. We're working with other people, many of them in other countries. And so we know that this is capable of being done at distances at least as great as the diameter of the Earth, and probably much further than that. And so anyway, I called my daughter. She's about 1,000 miles away from me. And I asked her if she would work on me remotely because I had something going on. I wasn't feeling right or something. And so I hung up the phone and she starts working on me. And right away, working on me remotely, we call this working by proxy, she found that I had an inherited trapped emotion, that at conception, I had received some emotional energy, in this case from my father. The specific emotional energy was hopelessness. And so my daughter started tracing this back. Now, the subconscious mind knows all of this information. Consciously, we know very, very little, but the subconscious mind knows all this and remembers everything. So she was able to trace it back. She found that I had gotten this from my father when I was conceived, but he had gotten this emotion of hopelessness from his mother when he was conceived. And she'd gotten it from her mother, and she'd gotten it from her mother. And my daughter traced it back 22 generations back. And then she found that was what it started with a grandmother, 22 generations back from me. And when she found that, when she arrived at that point of origin, all of a sudden, she could feel that there was someone standing next to her. She couldn't see anybody, but she could feel, and she knew who it was. It was this grandmother that this had started with. And she could feel her emotions. She could feel how desperate this woman was to have this energy released from her posterity. That's what she had passed on all the way down the line, all the way down to me. And she could also feel how overwhelmed with gratitude this woman was that this was being done. Well, when my daughter released that trapped emotion, and to release trapped emotions, what we do is we pass a magnet or a hand over the governing meridian, which is just a little river of energy that flows in the midline of the body. And when she did that and released that energy, she could feel it ripple through and release from all those other ancestors. And that's another fascinating thing about this that we find is that those ancestors, it's these energies seem to release from them as well, even though some of them are long dead. But this is what our testing shows. Now, this is one of the most powerful healing experiences I ever had in my life. And my daughter too, because I had passed that energy to her when she was conceived. It was just going right on down the line like a freight train till we released it. And I'll try to describe the experience that I had. All my life, I had struggled with this feeling of hopelessness. Now, I remember when I was writing the Emotion Code book, if anybody would have asked me during the time I was writing that book to describe in one word how that project felt without any hesitation whatsoever, I would have said, well, it feels hopeless to me, but I'm continuing, right? And every day when I would go to write, before I could write, I'd have to watch some really motivational videos or listen to some audios or something to try to overcome that weight of that hopelessness. And never knowing that what I was hauling around in my life was this antique, this ancient feeling of hopelessness we think she lived probably back in the 1400s. We don't know what happened to her, but she passed down that emotion. And so it was affecting me in my life. Well, when my daughter released that from me, I knew it instantly. Even though we weren't on the phone, I knew she was working on me. But all of a sudden, I'll try to describe this. Tim, it was like, if you can imagine growing up next to a factory that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there's a constant hum that comes out of the factory day and night. You've heard it all your life. You don't even notice it anymore after many, many years. But all of a sudden, if that factory goes out of business and shuts down, then the silence is deafening, right? Because suddenly it shuts down. That's what happened to me. All of a sudden, this background music of hopelessness, this very low level background feeling of hopelessness that was there every waking moment of my life suddenly was gone. And that was the first time in my life when I was able to actually comprehend that it was even there. And it really changed my life. Now, my daughter, it released from her as well. And it changed her life as well, because she is one of the most brilliant artists that you'll ever meet. I mean, just phenomenally successful and just an incredible artist, incredibly gifted, but she had never painted a thing until that emotion of hopelessness was released, you see. And about a year after that, my wife and I went to Seattle where she was living, and we went to an art show where all of her art, all this art just started pouring out of her. And it was absolutely amazing. And now you think about your own life. That was just one random ancestor of mine. But what about your ancestors? What did they go through? Maybe your grandfather was in World War I, or maybe a great-great-grandfather was put in the poorhouse, or who knows? But what we are finding is that the lives that we're living in our own little present are affected by this emotional baggage, that we are an extension of the lives and the emotional energies and the traumas that our ancestors lived. And so by finding and removing that kind of emotional baggage as well, and by the way, there is no way to find that other than tapping into the subconscious mind, because the conscious mind has no idea about these kinds of things. But when you start to look into this and you find that this emotional baggage is real, not only from your own life, but also from the lives of those ancestors, it's an incredibly powerful thing and a lot of fun to do.
And as I mentioned, one of the things I really like about the book is that it gives people the opportunity to do this work for themselves, on themselves. And yet the example you gave was you calling your daughter and asking her to work on you. So could you give us an example of how or when you might ask somebody else to work on you as opposed to doing this work on yourself?
Well, there's a lot that you can do working on yourself. I have always told people that I think that you can find and remove probably 80% of your own emotional baggage. But I honestly believe that there's going to be 10 or 20% of that emotional baggage, those trapped emotions, that you're not going to be able to find on your own. I had been doing the emotion code for many years. And I honestly think that trapped emotion of hopelessness that I had from so many generations ago, I don't think I ever would have been able to find that on my own. Now, that's just kind of how the body works. We ultimately are best off if we have somebody help us, and we can clear lots and lots of stuff on our own, but sometimes we just do need a little bit of help. Now, luckily, it's easy to do on your own. And in fact, I want to share a story with you. There was I think this story might be in the book. There was a woman that came to one of our events a number of years ago, and I was talking with her, and she told us this story. She said that she had gotten the emotion code book on audio and also in a printed form. She started reading it and listening to it. And her son started reading it and listening to it. And he started practicing with his friends, and she didn't pay too much attention. But a couple of weeks later, the phone rang. She answered the phone, and the woman that was calling identified herself as the mother of one of her son's friends. And she said, listen, she said, our son has a severe phobia of water. And, you can have a phobia to anything. And his was to water. She said, we've tried everything. He's had it all of his life. She said, we've taken him to many, many people. We've tried everything to fix this. Nothing has ever worked. She said, right now I'm at the community pool. She said, my son is out playing in the water with the other boys for the first time in his life. She said, your son did this. How is this even possible? What in the world is he doing? See, and those two boys are only 11 years old. But that shows you, gives you a little glimpse into how simple the emotion code is. It's simple enough that kids can do it, and kids are doing it all over the world and having great success, by the way. And but think about that. That little boy, who knows? But I can give you a scenario what might have happened with him. Maybe he slipped underwater when he was in a little, taking a bath or something, or maybe his labor was going on for too long. And so he developed a trapped emotion. I don't know what the trapped emotion was, but it might've been fear or panic or something like that. And so then once he's born, or once he starts growing up, he has this phobia of water that ties back to that experience, whatever that experience was. So very, very common, you see. One of the exciting things that we also do, and you did mention this, has to do with the heart and the heart wall. And this is really the most important part of the emotion code, and it has to do with the heart. Now, this is my favorite part of the book and my favorite thing to talk about. If you go back to the 1960s, when doctors started doing heart transplants, what happened was it didn't take long before people started to come back to the doctors, and they would report strange things. They would say, my taste in food has totally changed. I love Chinese food now. I didn't like it before. Or they'd say, my taste in music has totally changed. I love classical music now. And I hated it before. I never cared for it at all. And certain passages I'm listening to over and over. Or they'd say, my taste in food has radically changed. In fact, I'm going to every baseball game now. I never cared about baseball before. What's going on? Why is that happening to me? Or they'd say, my handwriting has totally changed. Possible. What's going on with me? Am I losing my mind? Or sometimes people would say that they had inherited now somehow with this heart, they had memories of being in places that they knew they had never been. And in every case, when these people were connected with the family of the donor, they would find out, oh, yes, that's our son's handwriting that you have. You have his handwriting. How bizarre is that? Or they'd say, well, yes, our son was a baseball player, so that must be why you like baseball now. That's really weird. Or they would say things like, well, our daughter loved to go to Paris, and she went every year. And you have memories now of being in Paris, but you have never ever visited? Those must be her memories. How bizarre. Well, you see, the heart there's a little brain in the heart that's full of gray matter and white matter. And that wasn't even really discovered until the 1970s. But you see, the ancient peoples were way ahead of us on this. They were way ahead of us, Tim. They believed anciently that the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance, and that the heart was really the core of our being. And in the West, we've never given any credence to those ancient ideas. They didn't have the kind of technology that we have today. We know the heart is just a pump. That's all it is, just a muscle. But in fact, in the last 20 years, new instrumentation that's much more sensitive has been developed that shows amazing things. The heart, for example, puts out a magnetic field that surrounds the body. It's about 12 feet in diameter. And you can measure the heartbeat anywhere from within about 3 feet, anywhere on the body. And they find that when one person's feeling love or affection for another person, their heartbeat will synchronize with that person's heart. And they'll beat at the same wavelength. And so it's really fascinating, all of this. Well, what happened was one day, quite a number of years ago, 1998, actually, my wife woke me up early one morning. She said that she'd had a dream, and in her dream, there were 3 symbols. And she asked me if I would help her to figure out what was in her dream. And as I was trying to help her figure out what the dream meant, I had what I can only describe as a waking vision, where suddenly before me, I saw this beautiful hardwood floor. And the room that I was in wasn't there anymore. I'm just looking at this incredibly beautiful hardwood floor. And I had this understanding that came into my mind that my wife's heart was underneath this floor. Now, I don't even use caffeine. Okay. I don't use anything. I'm very, very holistic and so on. And so this is a very strange thing. One of the strangest things that's ever happened to me. And this lasted for several minutes, at least 3 or 4 minutes. And I told my wife what I was seeing and what I was understanding, and she didn't know what it meant either. So I figured that since this was about her and her subconscious mind would know what's going on, I started doing some asking questions of her subconscious mind and getting answers through muscle testing to try to figure out what this meant. Well, here's what we found. When she was born into a family that was very kind of unsafe. Her dad was kind of a rageaholic. And by the time she was about 2 years old, she had put up a wall around her heart, we found. And as she went through the years of her life in junior high and high school and college, she added some more layers to that. We found that this heart was actually we called it a heart wall. It was made of layers of her emotional baggage. And so I asked her subconscious mind if we could start removing these. And we did. And it took us some time to get rid of those. It took us a week and a half or so, 2 weeks. And when we finally got rid of the last emotion that was making up that wall around her heart, there was an enormous shift that happened for her. With that wall, it was difficult for her to really feel like she belonged anywhere. Even with friends that she'd known for years, she always felt like she was the odd person out, like she was kind of expendable until the wall was gone. Then suddenly she felt like she was on the inside of the circle, not on the outside looking in. It was easy for her to feel depressed and to feel anxious with the wall. When the wall was gone, those feelings started to melt away. It was easy for her to feel negative emotions, hard to feel positive emotions when she had that wall. When the wall was taken down, that flipped and it became easier to feel positive emotions and harder to feel negative ones. Now, initially, when we discovered this, and I say discover, I mean, this was really shown to us. This was a God thing, no doubt in my mind whatsoever. But initially I thought, well, she might be the only person in the world that has this. This is kind of a bizarre thing. Well, what we know now is that about 93% of people have this wall. So think about this. If it's Valentine's Day, and if you're lucky, Tim, somebody might give you a heart-shaped box of, chocolates or something, right? That symbol, the heart-shaped symbol, dates back the understanding of the heart being the seat of the soul and the source of romance. I mean, it goes back to every society, to ancient times. Well, when you feel like your heart is breaking, when someone's really hurting you, or you're really deeply grieved about something, then you feel it here in the chest. You might feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest, or like you can't breathe. Have you ever experienced that, Tim?
Absolutely.
And most people have, right? And it seems that if you experience that kind of feeling, your heart is really under assault. We know now the heart is really a second brain. Scientists did some studies a number of years ago where they were looking at the nerve conduction between the brain and the heart. And they were expecting that the vast majority of the messages would be traveling from the brain, the computer, to the heart. what they found astonished them, because what they discovered was that the vast majority of the messages were traveling from the heart to the brain, indicating that the brain up here is obeying the messages sent by the brain and the heart, right? So anyway, I like to think we're living now in the age of the heart. And when that wall is taken down, things can change so dramatically for people. It's just the most incredible thing. In fact, one of the first people that I saw, I think it probably was the first person that I saw in practice after we had discovered this or really been shown this on my wife. There was a woman that came in to see me who had really severe neck pain. And she'd seen a couple of other doctors for it. They hadn't been able to help her. So she came in to see me kind of as a last resort. And as I was talking with her, she told me that she was 38 years old. She was a nurse and she was single and she hadn't dated in 8 years. And she was never going to date ever again. And she was dead serious about this. And she was an attractive person. And I thought, geez, that's kind of odd. So I asked her, I said, why do you feel this way? What happened to you? She said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with a guy who dumped her and broke her heart. So that was it. She hadn't dated since then and was never going to date again. So I tested her and found she had a heart wall. There were just 3 layers of emotion making up this wall around her heart. I cleared those 3 layers, probably took 10 minutes or less. And when I cleared that last emotional layer, that last force field, the whole thing is like a force field. It's invisible. You can't see it, but it's there to protect the heart. But when I cleared that last emotion, and by the way, all 3 of those emotions were from her breakup 8 years before. When I cleared that last one, all of a sudden, the neck pain was just instantaneously gone, right? And she was really excited and really grateful. And she left the office feeling totally fine. Now, I didn't see her again for 3 months. But she came back in 3 months later. I'll always remember this. I looked at her down the hallway and I said, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? What's going on? She said, she said, my neck has been fine since I was here. But she said, you cleared that heart wall from me. And that really works. She said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out that my childhood sweetheart has been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're dating and we're in love. And I think he's going to ask me to marry him, right? I just thought, wow, what a shift, right? So, you think about the things that we experience in our lives and the times when we feel like our heart's going to break. Well, that heart of yours is the most delicate, most important, I think, part of your whole being. And so it's a very common thing. Tim, 93% of people have put up a wall around their heart. 93% of people have a heart wall. Think about that, 93%. And when that wall is taken down, it's not uncommon at all for people to fall in love who never thought they would. Sometimes people's marriages improve dramatically. One of my favorite testimonies came in a couple of years ago from a woman in Italy named Raluca. And she said, for years, my marriage ran badly. And then I got a new husband. And I'm reading this for the first time and I'm thinking, oh, okay, she got a divorce, got a different husband. And then she continued to explain that what happened was she hired an emotion code practitioner in Budapest who worked on her husband in Italy and cleared his heart wall. And she said, now it's like I got a new husband. He's loving and kind and patient and gentle and so on. And she said, I had a heart wall too, and it removed mine, and I'm much, much better. And so this is a very, very important thing, a very important concept. And I mean, people who are trying, I mean, we all want to succeed in life, right? The best creative ideas that you will ever have will not come from this brain. They will come from this brain, from the heart brain, you see. And so people report that when that wall is taken down, creative ideas start to flow spontaneously to them. And they have great ideas that they might not have ever had before. And that old saying, follow your heart. Did anybody ever tell you to do that when you were younger?
A lot of that. Follow your heart, follow your bliss.
Yeah, it's good advice, right? Follow your heart. But what if you have a heart wall? Well, it makes it a lot harder to follow your heart if you've got a heart wall. See, there are just so many stories about this from all over the world, and people are finding that this works. In fact, I have to tell you, just a week or so ago, we were meeting. It was a business meeting. And we were meeting these 5 guys that are developers and so on. And one of these guys was a Russian guy. He just had kind of a poker face. And I kept trying to read him as the meeting went on. And I was just having a hard time. I couldn't tell if he was happy to be there or not. And so at a certain point in the meeting, we were talking about how this emotion code actually works. And so I asked these guys if they had any physical pain. He said yes, that he had physical pain in here, both sides. So he was sitting across the table from me. I started testing him and found he had a heart wall. So we were able to start clearing these emotions. I think there were 7 or 8 emotions that were making up this wall around his heart. And a couple of them were inherited from 10, 20 generations back. As the session went on, you could see his face kind of brightening and changing. And when the last emotion was gone and that wall was gone from around his heart, it was so funny because his countenance had completely changed. He had this grin and he said, "I want to stop smiling, but I can't." He said, "I just feel happy inside. I don't know." It was really fun. And we worked on another guy there, same kind of thing and same kind of results. And I told these guys, I said, "Listen, these two are going to be really different." And sure enough, they are. This work changes people's lives. And the nice thing about it is, I mean, if you want, you can hire someone to do this work for you. You can go to discoverhealing.com and you can look at our practitioner map. And there are people literally all over the world. And because it's energy medicine, you don't have to actually be there. You can find somebody that can work with you. And maybe your ideal person is in Helsinki, or maybe in Hong Kong, or on the island of Guam. I mean, it doesn't matter, which is such a different paradigm for so many of us because we're so used to dealing with Western medicine, and we're kind of conditioned in the West, especially in the US, to believe that if it's not a drug or surgery or a vaccine, it can't possibly have any value. But the vast majority of people are understanding that that's not really true, although those things certainly can have value at times.
Well, and the thing that keeps coming to me as you're talking about it and giving these examples is it's the difference between trying to stamp out symptoms versus going towards a cause.
Right.
And, there are various ways to conceptualize how these trapped emotions or these energies cause disruptions, not just in the emotional realm, but in the physical realm. And I really appreciate the fact that you were able to put this in a book, put the charts in there, give people a format if they want to try and learn to do their own muscle testing. And beyond that, discoverhealing.com has a resource for practitioners. So, the options abound for people who want to take advantage of this tool.
Right. Well, they really do. And like I said, I mean, people can learn how to do it. The whole method is in here in the book, and it's really easy to learn. And it's a lot of fun. And that's what's really driving the worldwide success of the emotion code. The vast majority of books that are written, when I wrote my book, I talked to a publisher and he said, well, you need to understand that 99.99999% of all books that are printed are basically dead on arrival. And some books are sold to family members and so on. But this book just keeps going and going. And that's the reason why, because people read it, they understand it. It's not difficult to understand. In fact, it was a matter of prayer, honestly. I'll just let you know that when I would work on this book, I made it a subject of prayer. My wife would sometimes help me and she would pray with me. And the prayer was that this whole concept would be simple and easy for people to understand. Because, sometimes quantum physics can be a very, very deep well. And I've done my best to understand it. I'm a practical user of it. And if you use the emotion code, you're going to become a practical user of these principles of quantum physics as well. But it's actually so simple that kids can do it. Witness the example that I gave you of the 11-year-old boy that healed his friend of his water phobia. Yeah, another thing that's interesting too about the emotion code is that because we're tapping into the subconscious mind, we can find things. The subconscious mind can reveal things to us that we have no memory of. And my favorite story about that, I was doing a talk in Las Vegas once, and I asked for a volunteer. And so this young woman comes up out of the audience. She's about 21 years old or so. And I asked her if she had any physical complaints, and she said that she didn't. And so I just had her hold out her arm, and I started asking questions. And I found that, and by hold out her arm, we teach you how to do muscle testing. So the subconscious mind will respond on testing, so that if I ask the subconscious mind a question, the answer coming back will be, if it's strong, if the muscle is strong, then that's a yes. If the muscle is weak, then that's a no. So I started asking questions, and I found that she had a trapped emotion. The emotion was forlorn, which is kind of feeling all alone and hopeless and desolate. And I traced it back through testing to when she was about 1 year old. And I asked her if she knew anything about that, and she had no idea. Well, I had happened to meet this woman and her mother. They came together at the very beginning of this when people were coming into this room. So I looked out of the audience for her mother, and there's her mother. And she looks as white as a ghost. She's kind of like this. And I said, hey, do you have any idea what this might be about? She was really embarrassed, but she said she thought maybe she did. She said that back in those years, she used to use cloth diapers. And one day she accidentally pinned her daughter to her diaper and didn't find out about it, didn't know about it until she changed it the next time. And of course, she was horrified. Well, here's this poor baby, probably for several hours, with this terrible pain, and nobody's coming to help. It gives us a little glimpse into probably how overwhelmed her mom must have been at that point. But anyway, so I released that trapped emotion, and she went back and sat down, and I carried on with the meeting. About 10 days later, I get an email. It's from this girl's mother. And she said, listen, she said, my daughter didn't tell you, but she said she's had a problem with her knee and her hip. And it's been going on for quite a number of years. And she said it's been slowly getting worse over the years to where it's kind of starting to affect the way that she walks, but it's just something that she lives with. And she said, the moment you release that trapped emotion of forlorn from her, that pain in the hip and in her knee has been completely gone. And she said, I waited 10 days because I thought maybe it was just kind of a fluke. But she said, it is gone and it doesn't seem to be coming back. So she said, I wanted to tell you that. And also she said, my daughter feels this new sense of lightness of being that she's never felt before. And she's telling everybody about this. Now, that's a great example of how your subconscious mind remembers everything that you've gone through. And, sometimes we don't remember where we parked our car. I mean, I lost my car about a week ago for a while. Sometimes we forget our anniversaries. Sometimes we forget things because our conscious mind is just kind of like a peanut brain up here. But the subconscious is vast, and it is connected to what you might call, what Rupert Sheldrake would call the morphic field, or it might be called the database of universal intelligence, or some people might call it the light of Christ, whatever. It's this database of universal intelligence that fills the universe. And our subconscious minds are tuned into that, see? So anyway, it's time for us, it's time for us to take back our healing birthright that belongs to every single one of us, because Western medicine is not going to get us there. These bodies of ours are absolutely the most incomprehensibly powerful machines, computers, creations. They know how to be healthy.
Yeah. They're healing devices.
Healing devices. Yep.
And I want to thank you for your contribution to that and giving us such a practical, applicable tool. And it's the Emotion Code book, and it's discoverhealing.com. And I greatly appreciate your taking time to be with us here today and share.
Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate you and giving me the chance to be on your show. So thanks.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Dr. Bradley Nelson, Doctorate of Chiropractic, retired, is a veteran holistic physician. He is one of the world's foremost experts on natural methods of achieving wellness. He has trained thousands of certified practitioners worldwide to help people overcome physical and emotional discomfort by releasing their emotional baggage. His best-selling book, The Emotion Code, provides step-by-step instructions for working with the body's energy healing power. A newly revised and expanded edition of The Emotion Code is now available. As of May 2019, St. Martin's Press. For more information and a free Emotion Code starter kit, visit emotioncodegift.com.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.